Welcome to the Ground and Pwn Podcast, a weekly show for fans of combat sports, gaming, entertainment, and plenty more. I'm Brian Shea, online content director at Game Informer, joined as always by Scott Fontana, the New York Post's MMA reporter. We are just about to emerge from this lapse in UFC action. We have some big cards on the horizon, but not so much this weekend. However, we do have a decent amount of gaming topics to chat about. But first, Scott, I need to know your precise thoughts about the Super Mario Brothers movie trailer.
I'll tell you what it is. It's anti-Italian discrimination.
Is that a Sopranos reference?
That is indeed a Sopranos reference. Thank you.
Yeah, Columbus Day, right? That episode?
Honestly, it's absolutely appropriate that I'm making that reference for this occasion on this day because it is Columbus/Indigenous Peoples Day.
Wow, I didn't even make that connection, but that's a good connection there from that episode because that was the entire.
I accidentally walked into the actual Columbus Day connection. That just happened, but yeah, I have been thinking that line every time I watch every time I hear Chris Pratt's voice because I'm like, come on, why'd you drop it?
Because he went with the Bob Hoskins, Lou Albano. I always want to say Lou Albino, but it's not that. It's Captain Lou Albano.
Lou Albano. No, I don't like
the Italian.
I watched
the Brooklyn.
I watched the Italian version of the trailer. I want to say it might have been even Kotaku that had shared it. I can't remember who.
Oh my god!
But I watched it, and I'll tell you, it sounds way more like Mario.
I heard the French version was. I didn't see any of the other languages, but I did hear people like the French version as well. But yeah, I don't know. I think that it's fine. Like if Chris Pratt, like if he's cast as Mario and he comes out and tries to do a Charles Martinet impression, people are going to be pissed at that. They're going to be like, oh, why didn't we just get Charles Martinet if we're going to pay this big movie star to do an impression of Charles Martinet? And Charles Martinet's in the movie. He's going to have some cameo roles, but like it's I don't know. I think it's perfectly inoffensive. I think that's the best way to describe my feelings on Chris Pratt's portrayal. I'm like, it sounds like Chris Pratt with a slight Brooklyn accent. I think the rest of it looks incredible, though. I think the rest, like Jack Black's Bowser, sounds awesome. I think that Charlie Day as Luigi is that we haven't heard anything but him yelling a couple of times, which sounds like Charlie Day yelling.
That is how that works, yeah.
But I do have concerns about how Charlie Day, who is, Luigi usually has the lower pitched voice than Mario in the games, so. Charlie Day is known for very high-pitched squeals when he gets excited. So how is that going to translate to that character? I mean, I guess they're just going to flip-flop who has what voice.
They're basically flip-flopping is what they're doing, yeah.
That would have been funny if they had Chris Pratt as Luigi and Charlie Day as Mario instead.
That actually would have been fun.
But I don't know. I feel like...
But they couldn't, they can't take Chris Pratt and say, hey, I know you're the biggest name on here, but you're not Mario. And you're not Bowser.
Also, they can't take Chris Pratt and be like, hey, you're not like the panicky, like excitable guy, but we're going to have you play the panicky, excitable guy. Whereas Charlie Day, personality-wise, that's a perfect fit.
No,
voice-wise, it's going to take some getting used to.
Yeah, no, I mean, it is what it is. But mostly for me, when I'm watching that trailer, I thought it was an unusual touch to not lead with Mario. I mean, he was almost like thrown in at the end, although really Luigi was thrown at the end, but...
I liked setting the stage, and I hope that what they're doing is going like this back to basics approach of like, all right, literally the story is Bowser is going from kingdom to kingdom trying to take over the world, and the Mushroom Kingdom is next, and Mario arrives there, and he's like, hey, I'll help you guys out. And I hope that's the entirety of the story. I hope there's no like weirdness thrown in, like the Sonic movie where there's like this wedding subplot, and then like all this other nonsense going on. Like just stick to the source material. Like I love those Sonic movies, but like especially the second one, there are some subplots that just don't work, but they just feel so shoehorned in so the human characters have something to do. I hope because this is an animated movie, we don't have to worry about that.
I bet we don't have to worry about that, but I'll tell you one thing. I don't know how you feel about this, and you can offer a rebuttal if you disagree, but I have really like the lowest of low expectations from a plot standpoint. I really just don't think it's going to be that good of like a movie in that sense. I'm just hoping that it'll have like some things that are fun and like some good callbacks along the way. Because my expectations are like in the toilet as far as the level of plot I'm expecting.
And that's all I need though, honestly. Like for a Mario movie to be fun, I need a basic story and just some really fun visuals and some fun adventures for them to go on. And I don't even care if they literally say like, hey, Bowser's conquering all these worlds. There's 8 worlds that you need to travel to and collect these stars, and like that's it. Like, you know, like we just need you to go to these 8 worlds, like very, very heavy-handed cues for the games. And then be like, all right, there's a castle in every world, and you have to take down this. I don't even care if they're so faithful to the game, as long as I get some fun set pieces, some fun character interactions, maybe some Easter eggs along the way, and just like a nonstop action-packed adventure with some funny moments.
I think this is going to end up being a movie that I'll take my kids to and they'll really enjoy. And I'll be like, hey, that was fun that I got those callbacks along the way. And I have high expectations for the animation and kind of the sets and all that, the digital sets, right? I have high expectations from that standpoint. And I think if I come away from that, while my kids enjoy it and I, maybe enjoy that on that level, I'm good with it. But yeah, I'm just not expecting this to be the video game movie that we're all like, hey, this is the Mario movie we've been waiting for, because Mario is just not a heavily plotted character or world.
I hope that it's not a heavily plotted. I hope there's not like scenes and scenes of exposition. Like I hope we just get like, oh yeah, Bowser, he's the King Koopa. He's going from world to world, conquering it, and now he's coming to us. We need to stop him. Let's go. I hope that's like the extent of the story we get, honestly. I don't want to hear like, hey, let's flash back to when Bowser was a little kid and this is what sent him down this path. I don't need that. I don't need any of that.
But you want Bowser Jr.?
Mario went into a pipe and he came out the other side and it was the Mushroom Kingdom, and now Keegan-Michael Key Toad is like, oh, by the way, he sounded very good too. I was a little concerned about him, but like he pulled the Toad voice off very well, and I legitimately hope that every single Toad is voiced by him, because in the games, all the Toads sound the same. So I hope that he voices every Toad. Because we see that poster that they released to announce this trailer. Mm-hmm. It had like 7 or 8 Toads like walking through a marketplace as Mario's on his way to the Mushroom Kingdom, and it's like I hope all of them are Keegan-Michael Key.
I don't expect them to, but I mean, that would be interesting, I guess, if they did. Yeah, I think it would get too confusing if everybody sounded the same in a movie. It could. It's different when we're playing a game and they're just, doing Toady stuff, right? But yeah, I mean, obviously that was the trailer. I still think it's weird that they took away the entirety of Mario's derriere.
That is weird. Yeah, I did see somebody make a funny joke.
Yeah, there's nothing there. Like you can't put a pencil anywhere near it. It's just
I saw somebody make a joke about how no wonder Peach has always been trying to bake Mario cakes. He's got no cake of his own. That was a pretty funny tweet. I wish I could tell you who tweeted that, but it was a very good one.
As someone with a low center of gravity, I felt a little insulted. It's like, hey, is my body type not meant to be represented here? That's anti-Italian discrimination.
I think it's going to be fun. I'm that set my expectations so much higher than they were when they were just rattling off the voice cast, and I was like, Chris Pratt is Mario.
Well, sure, it's different. It's different than just a bunch of names, right? You actually get to watch it. I just thought the animation itself was easily the most impressive part of it. It's so beautifully colorful and all that stuff, and I'm interested in the way that's going to look throughout the movie. I'm looking forward to that part of it for sure, and the fact that I'll take my kids, and it's nice to take my kids to the movies. So.
Absolutely. And you know what else has me hopeful? They use the Mario theme in it, and I'm hoping that means there's going to be some fun renditions on classic Mario music in this game. Like, if they go underground, is there going to be like some sort of like reimagined version of the underground theme that everybody knows? Is there going to be like a Bowser theme that they revamp for the movie? Like, that was one thing that I think that like, while we got a couple tastes of it in the Sonic movies, they've kind of dropped the ball on acknowledging the amazing music.
Sure.
We got it at the end of the first Sonic movie. There was a small like kind of piano version of Green Hill Zone, but other than that, I don't think there's been a whole lot of nods to the Sonic music. Now, if we could get some of that in the Mario movie, I think that would be a huge win, and like it would kind of make us perk up a little bit in our seats when we hear it.
That would be cool. I'm hopeful as well. I have a feeling that we'll probably get something like that. And if they don't, I think that would almost be a dropped ball.
Yeah, I hope it's not just like, all right, credits are rolling, and then we have like this like Mario theme beat with like a rapper rapping over top of it.
Hey, what if we end up with like warp pipes that we can take so we can skip to near the end of the movie? That'd be cool.
Would it? I mean, maybe if it sucks, that'd be cool.
Yeah, it would be cool. See, if there were any like hyper clever and like experienced gamers among the movie critics, they would throw in a reference like that if they pan the movie.
I'm excited to go see this movie. I'm not even gonna front. Like I know that we are like oh, like it's a little fun to make fun of Chris Pratt. I'm excited for this movie. I think this movie looks like a blast.
I guess I'm not excited for it necessarily, but yeah, I definitely want to see it. I'm almost more like curious, I guess is the way I describe myself, is like, I want to know, is it going to be better? Even like, I'm not looking for the Godfather plot. Like, I'm just not, but I have a feeling something like this just isn't capable of transcending in any way. But then again, my kids right now are watching the Lego Movie, which is a movie that, hey, you wouldn't have thought had any sort of like heart to it necessarily. And it actually really does. And you know who's the star of that one?
Will Ferrell. Oh. The live action star is Will Ferrell.
Right. Who's the main one you hear all movie? Chris Pratt.
Well, Chris Pratt just voices everyone now, because remember, like, he's voicing Garfield as well.
Is that right? I didn't
in the upcoming movie. So yeah, it's just everybody, like, we need a voice actor. Who's it going to be? Chris Pratt. Why not?
Chris Pratt seems like the wrong choice for Garfield. Like, that's like, I'm ambivalent really when I really get down to it. I'm ambivalent on him being Mario, but Garfield, that the voice just doesn't sound right. Bill Murray had it.
Bill Murray did have it.
Bill Murray had it. I think, I picture Garfield from the cartoon from when we were kids, and I just can't envision Chris Pratt getting that energy.
Have you ever seen Zombieland?
No.
Okay, so I'm going to spoil it a little bit here.
That's fine. I'm not a big zombie guy.
Spoiler warnings for anybody who has not seen this.
If you haven't seen Zombieland.
I want to say it's a 10-year-old movie at this point. So I think we're past the statute of limitations here. But there's a scene, and I hope I'm not misremembering this, but they find Bill Murray. Like they camp out, like they're trying to survive the zombie apocalypse, and they go in this house, and it turns out to be Bill Murray's house, and they're just hanging out with Bill Murray, and then Bill Murray gets infected, and they're like, "Do you have any regrets?" And he looks up, and as he's about to die, and he goes, "Just Garfield." Now, I hope that I'm not misremembering, because it's been probably about as long as the movie has been out since I've seen that movie. But I did laugh very hard.
I've also, to be honest, I've actually not seen the Garfield movie either. I've heard his
the
Garfield voice, so that pretty much does it. I was like, you know what? At least he caught it. I think he was the right casting for that one.
Yeah.
But for a movie that I didn't care about, so whatever. But I do care more about is I want to know what you have been playing in the last week since we last spoke.
So I've been checking out some games for the Switch for my other podcast. One of those games was No Man's Sky. Did you ever play that game?
I played it early, like when it came out. I think I'm pretty sure I reviewed it actually for my outlet at the time. And it was obviously a very different game, as we've talked about, and we acknowledge that the game has evolved over the years. So yeah, my experience is the old original version, not this one.
So this game came out on PlayStation and PC in 2016. It later came to Xbox in 2018, and now it's finally coming to Switch. More than 6 years after it originally came out on PlayStation and PC. And that 6 years has not been inactive. If you haven't followed the No Man's Sky saga, it has been just a constant stream of improvements, free updates, expansions, new modes, new features, everything, like expanding the entire scope of this game. And it is now out on Switch, and it runs rather well. And by the way, I had the same experience as you, or I guess to a lesser extent, where I played it at launch. I was like, this isn't really what I was hoping it would be. And then I kind of just bounced off it. And I was like, maybe I'll come back if they do any updates or whatever. And they've done so many updates, it became intimidating for me to go back to it. So I have not gone back to it. But I wanted to check it out for how well it ran on Switch for my other podcast, so I could give like impressions, right? So I fired it up over the weekend, and I was like, all right, let's see what this is all about. And I played for probably 2 hours or so, and it sunk its hooks in me. And I don't know if I'm going to keep playing because there's just so many games to play.
Right. You don't have the choice whether you can play it or not as much.
It's just like, yeah, because there's so many games coming out right now. There's, I'm about to go on a trip, which is maybe the good part of it because it's on Switch, so I can bring it with me. I'm about to go on a very long plane ride overseas.
Oh, there you go.
So that might lend itself well to me being able to play on the way to my destination. However, like once I get back, it's like off to the races with a bunch of games coming out, because you'll have Sonic Frontiers, Gotham Knights, God of War, Pokemon, like all in a string, basically. So that is that's kind of where I'm at with No Man's Sky. But I will say it is such a better experience now, even based on the little bit that I've played. It is so much more of a fluid experience. It does a better job of onboarding you. and I'm having a really great time with it. And I hope that I have a chance to play more of it, but we'll have to see how my travel schedule pans out here. And because literally once I get back, it's just like every game back to back.
Of course. Yeah, I am interested in checking it out, but also I'm not carving out that time because there's other games that I would rather play. So, it's probably one of those things I'm going to have to either get someone to say, hey, why don't you play it? And we can, I know you can actually co-op it though, right?
Now? I believe so. Yes. Yeah. I haven't gotten to that part yet, but yes.
If I can if I find anybody who's like, hey, let's co-op, and I've had friends come along sometimes that are like, hey, why don't we try it? And then we can't get on the same page time wise. So we just don't, it doesn't happen. So maybe I'm open to it. I'm absolutely, I'm curious to see it too. Everything's curious with me today. I'm curious George over here.
But yeah, so that is out now on Switch, and it comes alongside like the 4.0 update that hit all consoles, and it added like a ton of new features. It revamped inventory, it revamped like milestones and all this other stuff. So it's wild that they're 6 years out from this game and they're still making it substantially better. And that's just super commendable by
It's
Hello
admirable.
Games.
Absolutely. Yeah. Big props to the developers for not only supporting the game, but like persevering with a fan base that was extremely unhappy. And you know how gamers can be when they're unhappy. They're
perfectly rational.
Perfectly rational is the word I was looking for. Yes. Yes. We'll leave it at that one.
So I've also been playing the Street Fighter 6 beta. Now, I only played a few matches.
I saw you put that on here last night, and I was like, well, how do I play? And then I looked, and it was closed beta, and I'm like, God damn. But then I found like a sign-up sheet, and I'm like, well, shoot, if I had known, I would have signed up.
I've been having a great time with Street Fighter 6, even though I haven't really played too many matches, but I created my avatar. I ran around the little hub world that they have, which it's basically set up like a fighting game tournament where like there's like a giant screen. You can see who the hottest player is right now, who's on the best win streak, and then you can go challenge them if you want. There's some like a merch shop that you can go and spend like the in-game currency at and get like new customizations for your avatar. And there's like photo opportunities. It really looks like like Evo. Like, have you ever been to Evo or like any kind of fighting game expo?
I've never been. No,
I've never been either. But like I've seen all like the pictures and everything and like videos. And we had a video editor go this year, and like I've seen his stuff, and it looks like they're like copying kind of that layout and that vibe. And I kind of dig it. Like, it's kind of cool that you can just run around. And this is just like the kind of the multiplayer hub. And there's like stations. You could see somebody sitting at the station waiting for somebody to come up and play. And you can sit at the other station that's across from them and play against them. And it's kind of cool. But like the fighting is super smooth, as you'd imagine. I mean, we're coming up on 35 years of Street Fighter, or we're past 35 years of Street Fighter technically. And this is a series that they have really figured out like how to make a good feeling fighter. And there's a reason that it is the kind of the top of the food chain when it comes to fighting games. And I don't know, I had a really great time with the few matches that I did play, and I'm excited to play more.
I wish I was playing them. I'm incredibly jealous is really what I came away from seeing that. I'm super jealous. I wanted to play it. Even if it was like I had a pretty busy weekend anyway, so I don't know how much I would have played, but like I could have gotten a few rounds in. That would have been fun. But it's encouraging. I'm looking forward. Is there a date on that one? I can't remember.
I think it's just like first half of 2023.
Okay,
so we're not far.
I'm sure they'll do an open beta too at some point.
Oh, almost certainly.
Yeah.
It's coming along really nicely, and it's interesting. You know who I had on the phone earlier, or I guess last week at this point? I had Ed Boon on the phone, on Zoom, and
one does. Yeah,
we were talking about the first 30 years of Mortal Kombat. And I haven't published the interview yet, but I asked him, "What's the deal with like a Street Fighter crossover?" And he basically said, like, we've tried. We've reached out to them. We've said like, hey, we'd love to do like a crossover Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter. And they're like, all right, yeah, we'll bring it to our people. And then he just never hears back. And I said like, ghosted. And I was like, hey, I asked him like, is it the violence? Is it like, the people don't like the companies don't like seeing their characters getting like decapitated or anything like that? And he's like, yeah, I'd imagine that's what it is. Like, you don't want to have like their mascots getting like their hearts ripped out and brutally murdered on screen. And I asked him, I was like, if you were able to pull that off, we know like Super Smash Brothers exists, but do you think that would be like the next biggest like crossover like in fighting game history? Mm-hmm. And he said like, I think that probably would be, but there are some other big ones that I'm interested in. And I was like, ooh, what else could he be talking about? And what fighting games would you like to see crossover the most?
With Mortal Kombat in particular?
Any of them. Like what I mean, Mortal Kombat is what we were talking about, but like if you could just cross over, we already got Street Fighter Cross Tekken, and it was kind of a mess because they didn't know what monetization schemes they wanted to employ, and it resulted in a messy gem system. If you ever played that game, where it's like
I maybe played around, but like I didn't go deep into it.
There was a lot of potential with that project, and they floundered it because they couldn't decide if they wanted it to be a free to play with monetization or a premium game, and then they settled on a premium game last minute, and they had all the monetization still in it, and it was just like a disaster. That's why the gem system really exists. But like Street Fighter Cross Tekken is the kind of game that I would want, where it's like you take like a 3D fighter and you implement it into like a classic 2D style. Think like I was thinking like Mortal Kombat with Soul Calibur.
Okay.
Or if you want to go a different route and like
Soul Calibur and Tekken would have been interesting too, because they both exist in the 3D space.
Yeah, but I kind of
for me it gets hard. Like I know they did cross over Tekken and Street Fighter, but I feel like 3D and 3D ought to go together, and 2D and 2D ought to go together.
But I do like the idea of transposing these characters' movesets to a new space.
Okay.
Like I like seeing like, all right, how would Jin from Tekken perform in a 2D space? It's like how with like Tekken 7, they put Akuma from Street Fighter in Tekken 7, and it was like, oh, this is really cool seeing Akuma in like a true 3D fighter. And I think that those are kind of the interesting thoughts. It's like when I get Mario Maker 2 and I fire it up and I'm like, what do I want to make? And sometimes I'll make an original level. Sometimes I'll try to make like a reimagining of another concept that's happened in another video game. Sometimes I just sit down and I say, I want to make Bob-omb Battlefield from Mario 64 in a 2D Mario World style. And I try that, and that's so much fun to me to try to solve that puzzle of like, all right, well, this is very obviously a 3D space that I need to recreate in a 2D space. And I like seeing how the professionals do that with like some of these characters. But yeah, I would say that my answer, if Mortal Kombat versus Street Fighter, like that's the clear winner for me. If that's not possible, I would want Mortal Kombat and Soul Calibur.
Okay.
But you're saying you want Tekken and Soul Calibur?
Yeah, mostly just because I think it also would be interesting because you've got the unarmed combat versus the armed combat.
Yeah. I wonder if maybe Tekken would be a better fit for Dead or Alive.
I didn't really play Dead or Alive.
Yeah.
That's a blind spot for me.
It is. I mean, I really love Dead or Alive 2. I've kind of fallen off the series a little bit. Dead or Alive 5, I think, was the last one. And it really had a long lifespan, but they buoyed it by sales of DLC costumes because there's a very very horny fan base for that game.
There sure is, and that's why they made a volleyball game a bunch of years back too.
That's why they made Extreme Volleyball, where all the characters are in very small bikinis, and that's why many of the costumes for Dead or Alive 5 are very small bikinis.
Yeah, I believe it.
So I've also been playing a game to transition from
trying to get away from horny teenagers.
Yes, to Lego Brick Tales.
Oh yeah, this is much different. Yeah, total opposite direction. I'm curious about this one. Yeah,
this is a game that when I brought it up when you guessed it on my podcast,
yes,
you seemed very interested in this. And
yes, I'm immediately perked up. Like I said, my kids are watching the Lego Movie now, so
I think that this is a good one for you and your kids. Okay. I think that this is a game that the premise it embraces it wholeheartedly. I think that there's a little bit too much. I mean, I'm still very early. I probably put 4 hours into it, but I think that they do a good job taking the premise of like, hey, like here's like a set number of blocks, and you just need to build what we tell. Like here, like a bridge. Like the bridge is out. You have like these 6 blocks. How do you build a bridge? And then you can run a physics simulation, and a robot will drive over it to see if it'll work. And if it works, then the camera goes back to the diorama that you're in, like the world, and that what your creation is just in the world now. And so that's always satisfying to see, like, oh, this thing that I made, like it's completely imperfect, but it works. And now it's in the world. And like I did the kind of like the tutorial like lab that's the game starts off on, and then I'm in the first world where I'm in like this jungle biome, and it's starting to get a little bit more challenging, but I hope that it gets even more difficult than it is now, because it's still a pretty breezy experience. But I do like that once you complete a puzzle, I just not too long ago learned this, that you can go back and actually, because like when you do the puzzle itself, you only have a set number of blocks. And the thing is, you have to have them connected to like one of the base pieces. And then other than that, you can build wherever you want. But the thing that I like is you can go back after the fact. If you've completed the puzzle, you can re-enter the puzzle afterwards, and you suddenly have an unlimited play box that you can pretty it up and make it look however you want. So like, there was like this very basic bridge that I had to build like over like a river in the jungle. And I went back to that and made it like a covered bridge with like all these cool like designs on the roof and everything. And I had a good time doing that. So I like the direction that they've taken it.
This is exactly the type of game that my oldest son especially is going to love, because he's got like an engineer's brain, and like he's just super, super smart like that. And he loves puzzles, like solving like spatial puzzles. I've downloaded like engineering like games that like were recommended like for adults kind of, and he really does take to those. So it's nice to hear that not only could he have maybe some sort of similar experience, but it's with Legos.
Yeah,
like that's what it wants. Like you're making it sound as if maybe this isn't the most challenging experience for an adult.
Not so far anyway.
So far, but for a child, this is like, for my child in particular, this sounds perfect. And so I'm very interested to see as you sink more time into that, if you can let me know how that goes, because I think this might be a game. I don't let my kids play my Nintendo Switch on their own typically, like unless I'm like observing, I'll let them play like Mario Kart. But this might be a game where I could actually allow my son, hey, like I'll sit here and you play it too. But I don't know.
Have they played any of the Bridge Constructor games?
No, I don't think so. No.
I don't know, like, I know they did like a Portal spin-off for that, like the game Portal.
Yeah.
So I don't know if maybe that would be like appropriate for kids, but like the standard Bridge Constructor seems like it would be right up your kid's alley, because it's all about like physics simulations, making sure like, all right, you have like these support poles, you have these cables, and you just need to make it so like this bridge doesn't fall over when a truck tries to drive across it.
I'll have to keep that in mind. Yeah.
I think those games are on Switch, but they're also on PlayStation and PC.
Sure.
But yeah, so that's what I've been playing. What have you been playing?
So I finished Control. I've been playing that a little bit here and there. I was able to finally like kind of kind of pick myself up by the bootstraps and really finish it, right? And my number one takeaway from it is that was weird.
And you played the stuff after the big encounter, right? The where it really gets weird.
You mean after the credits really roll, or what do you mean?
After the fake out credits.
Yes, I played past there.
Okay, just want to make sure, because I knew somebody who stopped there. They're like, all right, I beat it, and they just walked away. And I'm like, what are you doing?
No, that's not me. No, I'm the one who sits there and lets the credits go by like completely, even if I'm like, all right, I really want to go to bed, but I got to make sure there's nothing at the end. So I'll sit there. But yes, those fake out credits were interesting. Sorry if that spoils anything. Blame Brian. But yeah, it's a weird game, but like, I mean, I enjoyed the experience, but even still, like, a part of me is just like, what did I play?
Yeah, that's that goes hand in hand with a lot of what Remedy does.
Yeah,
but Control is definitely like this is the way I said it to the guys at Remedy. Like, I'm sitting there with Sam Lake and I was talking to him about the game, and I was like, look, this feels like the ultimate realization of everything Remedy has done to this point. It has elements of Alan Wake, it has elements of Quantum Break, it has elements of Max Payne, and all that kind of comes together in this supremely weird science fiction, like just supernatural story that
paranormal or whatever. Yeah.
I forget what the term that they used, but it was some term that they're like, oh yeah, this is like pulling straight from this genre. And I looked it up and I was like, oh yeah, it absolutely is. It's like something that's like basically the it's, I don't know what the term is, but it was like something inexplainable invades our very normal world, and there's no rational explanation for it whatsoever. And what does that do to the world? And that's what the genre was. And they really wanted to play into that. And I'm like, oh, that explains that perfectly.
I guess so. Sure. I my favorite experience of it, and I don't want to spoil it too deeply, but my favorite experience is when you're moving through essentially the part of the house that continues to move around as you go through.
Oh yeah, that the ashtray maze.
I'm trying to speak in the ash maze or ashtray maze or whatever it was.
That is maybe one of the coolest parts. I saw that when I was out.
That
in
was
Finland.
The coolest part for me, absolutely.
When I was out in, and they're playing some music to that, which fits really cool. It
was like the most kinetic experience that I had in the game, and I really liked that part of it. I almost wish like more of it was like that, because especially the environments in the game, they're very samey. You know, it's you're in the oldest house, this government building that's obviously more than it seems, but also
it's brutalist architecture.
Yeah. That's not necessarily the most interesting environments all the time, and I think they do what they can with that while not, diverging from it very much. So it was nice to kind of have that. I was like, wow, this is very different. I would like more of this.
Yeah, I really enjoyed that part of it, and I would agree that's the best part of the game. But also, when we saw that, I was like, oh, this is awesome. They're like, oh, just wait till you see the final version. And I'm like, all right, well, cool. And that's a very cool part. I think that some of the really like kind of freaky enemy encounters are fun. Like that thing that kind of like pulses like really fast and just like sucks things in like with gravity and throws them. Like I think that thing is awesome. And like you kind of have to lure it away from like into traps.
Sure, it's a puzzle.
Yeah, like it's like, all right, you can't kill this thing. You just have to lure it into a trap and shut the blast door before it escapes.
Yeah. That was an interesting puzzle.
And they do a really great job of doling out your powers, and it becomes like a really cool power fantasy of like, all right, I can pull this like with my mind over to me and throw it at these people. I can lift the ground up and use it as a shield. I have this mutating gun that I can use that like changes based on like what I need it to do.
I didn't play around with the different guns very often, though. That was the other thing. It was like almost like there wasn't enough incentive for me to play around with them other than like, hey, why don't you try them? Because I found that I could kind of get through encounters mostly using the powers.
Yeah, that is true. But I think that the gun was also helpful if you changed it to the shape that you needed it to be. But like, yeah, I think like the pistol was typically pretty utility.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I'm glad you had a good time with that. And have you been playing anything else?
I also picked up, because now we're just about a little more than a month out, I guess.
On the home stretch.
Is it just about a month? I think so.
It's less than a month.
My goodness, wild. From the release of God of War Ragnarok. So I had always planned before Ragnarok came out that I was going to dip back in one more time to, not necessarily one final time, but one more time into God of War. This is my fourth playthrough of the game, and I wanted to play it once again on New Game Plus. Switched back up to hard mode because earlier this year I played on the easiest mode because I was just trying to collect materials and upgrade gear and that kind of thing and try to get the best kind of gear sets for like a real run at the game. So I'm on hard mode, like I said, and my goal in this one is to get all the way through the Valkyries and beat Sigrun on the hardest difficulty in New Game Plus.
You're going to breeze through God of War Ragnarok, because I imagine you're not going to jump right in at the hardest mode. You're probably going to jump into normal. And then
I do tend to like to play the games like early on, like my first playthrough, especially if it's a game I think I'll play again. I do like to start on an easy difficulty so that I can kind of go through the story and really experience it rather than get frustrated. And then if I want to challenge myself, I will challenge myself. And I, with every God of War, I've always played it on hard mode at some point. So yeah, I think you got me pegged here, sir.
You were going to just breeze through this. I mean, that's kind of a fun experience, though, if you're playing a character as powerful as Kratos. And I know he's fighting other gods, right? Like he's probably going to fight Thor in this one. I mean, who knows? He might fight Odin. And it's like, those should be difficult battles. But at the same time, it's like, you kind of want to be like this, like, again,
power should be appropriate to the character.
Yeah. And like
he's
already
should match that. Yeah,
he's already wiped out the entire pantheon of Greek gods.
Mm-hmm.
So fighting Thor shouldn't be that challenging, I don't think.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, he had a tough time with Baldur, of course.
He did.
Mm-hmm. I've faced Baldur now, like, because you fight him several times in each game. I've fought him like 8 times now.
That's such a cool. I mean, all those boss battles against like other gods in God of War 2018 are so amazing.
But in particular, and I should say, so like, as I played New Game Plus hard mode the first time I played New Game Plus, and that was before I had my character upgraded enough. Right, that run was super, super hard. Like, first encounter was like whipping my butt. That
I don't doubt it.
This time, because I'm hyper upgraded again, it was I'm moving through the game much more smoothly. It really is like a distinct difference by leveling your character up, and that's because your character's a certain level compared to the enemies. So it really was at a deep deficit to do that. So I am now just past the dragon. If you remember that in God of War, yeah. That. So I've just got past that part and moving my way back over to where the witch is, Freya. Mm-hmm. So we'll see how I do, because again, my goal is to beat Sigrun, who I perceive to be the hardest battle in this game. And to do this on New Game Plus hardest mode is going to feel like a major accomplishment for me personally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, I mean, you should be proud of that if you are able to pull it off.
If I do, I'm definitely capping that video, and I'm definitely sharing it. So that'll be one for the posterity.
God, I can't wait for Ragnarok.
I know, me too. I can't wait for the end of the world.
I'm happy that I will probably be able to. I mean, I'll probably have to beat Sonic Frontiers before Ragnarok comes out.
I don't think you'll have a choice.
Although I might then have Pokemon ahead of time, so I might have to wait until December to play God of War Ragnarok, to be honest.
Well, shoot, I can't play the game basically the first week either. I'll probably buy it day one, play it for an hour, and then get ready for, like I said, I'm covering UFC that week, so it's going to be around here. I will not have a lot of time to play that game. I'll probably I'm going to see if I can ask fighters if any of them are interested in playing that game either, so I can commiserate about the fact that we can't play the game this week.
You know who is a big God of War fan, or at least he has been filmed on camera playing God of War?
Who's that?
Daniel Cormier.
I believe it. it. I know he plays a lot of games. It's inspiring that he's able to do so many things professionally and be successful while also being a gamer. So I appreciate that. You saw he was. I mean, I don't watch, and I don't think you do, but you saw that he was the special enforcer referee or whatever in WWE over the weekend.
Oh, I'm sure he loved that. I did see that. I'm sure
he had a great time. So it was cool to see.
Yeah, I mean, he's a huge wrestling fan as well. Yep. So like, it's I haven't really listened to any of his shows since Ariel left. Like, I used to listen to DC and Helwani a lot.
I've checked out sometimes when he has like a guest on that I'm going to be interviewing. Because I like to look at what other interviews are being done, so that I don't just ask the same questions, or that maybe I'm inspired by their questions to ask follow-up questions.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. I think it's important to do that where you can. I mean, you're going to miss interviews because sometimes fighters will do interviews with all sorts of places, right? And it's hard to find all of them in some cases because sometimes they're smaller outlets, right? But I do my best to do my due diligence and hopefully find some things that aren't being discussed or could be followed up upon and found out something interesting. So
makes sense.
Yeah.
So there's a couple of other gaming talkers here before we switch over to a brief discussion of MMA stuff that's happening, because there's
we don't have a ton of fights, so
not a whole lot of stuff happening. Yeah. Overwatch 2. You know, I was super hyped for this game.
Yes, I do. I know a lot of people were. Yeah,
and I gave it a good score. I gave it a 9 out of 10 in my review. Okay. I played on pre-release servers, and we had a great time. I think that there's a lot to love about this game. However, there was a rough launch, and it launched the same day as our last episode hit, so we did not cover this launch.
Sure.
People were getting into the queue with like 200,000 people in front of them, and it would tell you 200,000 players in front of you, and then it would finally hours later let you into the game, or it would say like hours later it would say like, all right, like finding the server, and then it would then put you in the queue for that server, and it would be like 200,000 players in front of you, and it'd be like, oh my god, I'm never getting to this game. I was a little bit luckier in that, like, I would put it on, it'd be like 5,000 players in front of you, and then it would take like maybe 20, 25 minutes, and then I'd finally get in. But once I was in, I didn't have any of my skins, any of my cosmetics that I unlocked from Overwatch 1.
I did see you talking about that, yeah.
I was like, oh, God, that's 1,000 hours of gameplay gone. And then Overwatch or Blizzard decided that they were going to do some serious maintenance. I to their credit, they were getting hammered by a ton of players because they went free to play. So a bunch of players were jumping on for the first time in a long time. It wasn't just like, all right, there's all these people paying $60 to play this game. It's like, no, this game is free. So everybody was jumping on at the same time, essentially. They got 2 separate DDoS attacks on their servers in the first day. So it was just a disastrous launch, and not entirely their fault, to be fair, because there were 2 DDoS attacks, which are just basically sending artificial traffic their way and to take their servers down. And that, it seemed like they cleared that up, and then they performed maintenance. First, they had at the tail end of last week, they had a 1-hour window, a 3-hour window where the game was just down, and they were performing like hardcore maintenance on it, and then another 1-hour window. That seems to have done the trick, because not only shortly after that did my accounts merge and I got all my skins on my account, but I also was able to join a game within like 2 minutes of trying to get in. So it was
that's good.
It seems like it is stabilized. They even put out a message saying like, hey, some players might still have some problems, but it seems like our servers are stabilizing. It seems like most people are able to get into the game relatively quickly. So if you are still having trouble, keep trying. It should stabilize soon. And it's like that seemed to ring true for me. So I definitely commend them, because like that's, it's not uncommon for an online multiplayer game to have problems at launch. We've seen it. I would say maybe the earliest example I remember of just like an outright disastrous launch was probably Battlefield 3, where like it was so exciting and so many people wanted in that it just collapsed their servers and we couldn't get in for the longest time. I'm sure there are earlier examples, but like in terms of my time in the games media, that was the earliest example I could conjure up in my brain. So it's not like this is a new problem where it's like, or one that's even unique to Activision or Blizzard or anything. I mean, even the most recent Battlefield game it had some really bad problems at launch, 2042.
Right.
And it was one of the worst launches of the past few years, honestly. And to Blizzard's credit, they definitely got that game up and running fast. Once the DDoS attacks subsided, once they were able to perform that server maintenance, they seemed to get their stuff together, and it seems like people are having a much better experience now.
Oh, that's good to hear. I will say, though, and I said this to you before we came on, that when I see stuff like this, I am not dancing on anybody's grave, and I'm not trying to poo-poo anybody's fun. But for me personally, when I see stuff like this, it reinforces why I feel much better preferring the solo experience, that like it doesn't need to rely on the ability to go online to play the game in any way. It's just, it would be very hard to take away my ability to play the game through other means like that. Like I could buy the disc version of God of War Ragnarok, and I don't even need an internet connection. I can play that game,
theoretically, some games do require a day one update, and
no, but seriously, like you can still put the game in and play it offline. Like if you don't live with an internet connection, these games will let you play.
Though some games legitimately do require a day one update. And like if you get to that menu, I forget what there were some examples in recent years where like you would put it in and it would say like you need to perform a day one update in order to, or you can't play this game until you download the update that we put out.
Well, that is some BS. And if that happened to me and I had no internet connection, I'm bringing that game back and saying, give me my money.
I mean, I'm sure you would have a case to do so as well.
Sure.
So Overwatch,
that stinks. But again, for me, it's just the fact that I don't like the idea that your ability to play a game can be taken away from you by means like that. And it's not just maintenance. I mean, the DDoS attacks, that kind of thing. I was playing Destiny, the original Destiny, years ago. Its first year that it was out. And I remember, I think it had a few DDoS attacks, but the one in particular that shut me down was around the holidays because I was playing it a lot at that point. And I was frustrated that I couldn't get to Zur and get my exotic from Zur that week. And because it coincided with all that stuff. So that was my first experience with like a DDoS attack that took away my ability to play a game, and it really did. It definitely left some sourness in me. It didn't shut me off from playing that game in particular, but I have moved away almost entirely from playing online games, as we've spoken about before.
Yeah, and man, it's just we live in such a different world than we did even 10 years ago in terms of like how much we rely on online components for any game, not just online multiplayer games. Like I said, like patches. Like if a game comes out in a broken state, it's not the end of that game necessarily. Like I know some games it's like a bad launch has damned them, but like look at Anthem. Anthem came out, and I know that's a living service game, or it was a living service game. Now it's a dead service game, but
yeah, it's very dead.
A bad launch. Like people were very hyped for that. It's a new game from BioWare that uses like Iron Man mechanics. Like, come on, how could you not be excited for that coming off of the Mass Effect series? I know Andromeda people didn't like, but like Anthem had all the hype in the world, and it had a really bad launch, and it never recovered from it. It never recovered from it. No Man's Sky. We talked about it earlier this episode. That could have been that case, but Hello Games, to their credit, stuck with it, and they fixed it. And that's why it's so commendable. Yeah, could be an entirely offline experience. And you know, as long as you have an internet connection, they were able to make it the game that people wanted from the start, and then some. I think they've exceeded everybody's expectations at this point because of how much they've expanded on it.
I've seen the drips too. Yeah,
6 years of post-launch active development, and and again, I'm playing it on Switch. I got it on Switch. I did not buy it. They did provide me a review code. I got it on Switch, and I wanted to check it out on Switch because I want to have this procedurally generated universe on the go, and that's super cool to me to have like the ability to do that.
Sure. But yeah, I feel bad for all the people like you, but it definitely, again, just for me, I'm feeling much better about my choice to budget my time for solo experience like Control, like God of War. It just and I'm an only child, right? I grew up playing games by myself, so like this is part of my experience as well, like where I'm just I'm comfortable playing a game just me, you know?
Yeah, and everybody, I largely enjoy single player games as well. And I like doing things at my own pace. Like, I mean, look at my top 3 games of all time: Breath of the Wild, Ocarina of Time, Final Fantasy X. None of those have multiplayer components.
Sure.
So it's not like I'm like, oh yeah, Mr. Multiplayer. I would say that
I get it.
Probably the only online multiplayer game, I guess there's 2 in my top 10 games of all time, are probably Overwatch and Portal 2, which Portal 2, it's just a side co-op mode. It's not even like a competitive multiplayer.
Yeah, I think you can count that as a solo experience.
So yeah, I mean, I also largely prefer single player experiences, but a good multiplayer game, man, when it hits, it hits.
That you're not wrong there. Like I've had games that have gotten their hooks in me. Like Destiny really did the first year. I mean, I played way too much Destiny, like actually too much.
I played a lot of Destiny, and especially once Destiny 2 came out, because Destiny 1, let's not forget, that had a pretty rough launch as well, where people were like, really, this is it? This is the only content? There's no story? There's nothing? Like,
but it had the loot cave.
It did have the loot cave, and that was the most fun that I had with Destiny 1 in its entire existence. Once Destiny 2 came out, I was like, okay, this is the fleshed out experience I want from that game.
Yeah.
But you know what? Speaking of games that are traditionally single player, but have a multiplayer component, Pokemon Scarlet and Violet got a new trailer last week.
I did not see the trailer.
Well, if you ever want to know exactly we don't have to spend a ton of time on this because it was a long trailer, and I think it gets a little in the weeds for this show.
Okay.
It's Pokemon Company came out on Twitter and was like, hey, we're going to have a trailer tomorrow. And like, okay, cool. Everybody's excited for it. We didn't expect it to be 14 plus minutes. So we got a whole overview of what. So basically what it did was it took like, because, it's an open world game.
Direct right there.
It really was. And they took like an open world approach, because it's the first open world Pokemon game. And they followed the stories of these trainers going around in the open world. It's like, hey, let's see what this character's doing. Let's see what this character's doing. And they're going and like showing like how you can approach this game's story in different ways if you want to, like in the order that you want to. And, it had a bunch of different elements. Like it showed how like, there's a mode called Let's Go, where whoever the first Pokemon in your party is will follow you around outside of the Pokeball, like when you're just running around in the world. and you can send that Pokemon out to do little tasks for you. So like if you see a wild Pokemon just kind of standing in the world, you can send that Pokemon out and it will battle that Pokemon automatically and either win or lose, and then come back and bring any items that it had to you. Similarly, you can, if you see like an item in the world, you can send your Pokemon out to go retrieve it and bring it back to you. So I guess this is in the name of like streamlining.
Okay.
And then like
I do like quality of life improvements.
Yeah, and I don't know if they're really going as far as they did in Pokemon Legends Arceus, which came out earlier this year. They did some cool stuff with that in terms of like streamlining and quality of life, and I'm hoping that some of that is implemented, but it doesn't appear to be from the footage that we saw. We also saw you can craft your TMs. Like, so if you find items in the world, you can actually build. I don't know if you know what a TM is. I don't know how much you like.
Oh, okay, no, I'm familiar with Pokemon lingo.
Okay,
most of it. Some of the more recent stuff, maybe I've missed, but yeah, like traditional stuff, I'm in.
So, hold on one second. Okay. Sorry, Steam just gave me a very important pop-up notification that my access has been revoked from a game, and I don't know what that means, but whatever.
Ooh, yeah, we'll deal with that later.
Yeah. Sorry, my entire screen went black for a second because of it.
That's scary.
But yeah, so so you can craft your own TMs. And based on like stuff that you find from Pokemon, and also league points, which you get from completing like gym battles or trading in materials to Pokemon centers. And I guess every Pokemon center now has like a crafting section as well. You can run around and do that. So it seems like they're doing some cool stuff with this. There's also the Terra raid battles where that's 4-player co-op as well, and you can go into these battles against these really powerful Pokemon. And it's not turn-based. You're just kind of battling, and you don't have to wait for your other people's turns to come up. Like, it's just you operate on a recharge of when you can attack and like use items and everything like that. But like, it's not like you have to be like, all right, now I have to wait for my co-op buddy to take his turn. All right, now I have to wait for the other guy. Now I have to wait for the other guy, like you did in past games. Like Sword and Shield, when they had the max raid battles, you had to wait for everybody to take their turn individually before you could go again. Now it's just everybody kind of operates on their own timer.
Interesting. That is an interesting divergence from the formula.
But I'm excited just to explore with co-op partners, because you can just run around the world with up to 4 people. And you could do picnics. Like they showed like a picnic that you could go on, and like you have to. There was a moment where I'm like, "What the hell is this game, dude?" Like they were like, you can have to build a sandwich, and like there's like a little sandwich building mini game where like based on stuff that you have in like your basket, you can build sandwiches. Like you put the bread down, and you put like the meats and the cheese and the veggies, and then they're like, if you overstuff it, it can fall apart. And then the Pokemon, your party eats it, and based on like you eat it, like based on how much they like it, they'll recover HP and get like special like battle abilities in like the next like however long time. It's such a weird mechanic.
That is ridiculous.
You can also wash your Pokemon, like give them a bath.
Okay, I mean that makes sense. Sure, they probably get dirty.
Yeah, well, it said like if like the Pokemon
especially
that's like,
rock Pokemon.
The Pokemon, well, you don't want to spray the rock Pokemon with too much water. They're weak to water.
Hurt them.
But like, if your Pokemon's running around outside of its Pokeball, it can get dirty and tired, and giving them a bath will clean them and like restore HP because it'll let them relax a little bit. So
yeah,
like there's a lot of cool stuff. Let me see if there's any other things in my notes here. There's a new Pokemon.
That's right. I think we covered a lot, right?
Girafarig has a new evolution. Yeah, I mean the open world exploration. You can open up a map and put a waypoint if you want to, like, so you can go around there. And there's also base battles. So like you crash these bases of like the bad team. Like every Pokemon game has a bad team, and this is Team Star that you're taking on this time. It's just basically like the troublemakers at your school, because the story of this one seems to be that like you're going to a school. And these are the troublemakers, and they have these bases around the region, and you have to infiltrate them, and they're going to send out their grunts to stop you. And you have to defeat all these Pokemon that pop up using the Let's Go feature, where you send your Pokemon out to battle them automatically. And in that one that they showed, like you had to defeat like 30 like minion Pokemon basically, and then the boss came out. And you had to do like a traditional like Pokemon battle with that person. So they're doing some cool stuff. I'm still kind of cautious about like how much of a step forward really is this, and like is this going to be like, oh yeah, that was their first attempt at an open world, maybe next time they'll do it right. Like that,
Yeah.
I'm worried that's what it's going to be, but I don't know. Pokemon has long been one of my favorite series, and I'm excited to see how Scarlet and Violet turn out.
I do like the idea that I could play co-op because, well, it would be tough for me to do this now, but the idea that eventually, when maybe we own a second Nintendo Switch in our home, my wife and I could both play Pokemon like in the same games. That would be really neat.
Yeah,
because she's a bigger Pokemon fan than I am.
Really?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, she's not like she's not a Pokenut, you know, but like she's played more of the recent games, especially than I have.
Pokenut sounds very refreshing, by the way. It reminds me of coconut, but also mixed with pineapple, maybe.
There you go. That's probably the type of nut that they eat in the world of Kanto. Well,
I don't know how we transition away from that, but
there is no transition. What else do we have to talk about? Because we want to get to games. We don't have a whole lot of fighting stuff. But we do have a little bit. So what do we have before we move over there?
So we just real quick, CD Projekt Red. You know them, you love them. They're the Witcher creators, or the Witcher game creators. They're the Cyberpunk game creators. They announced several new games. So brand new Cyberpunk game. We have no idea when it's coming out, but it's codenamed Orion.
I bet it's coming out in 2077.
It literally might, because like they haven't even started development. I don't think they just announced.
Yeah, 2077 feels good.
The trilogy of Witcher games, codenamed Polaris, Canis Majoris, and Sirius. So these are all named after stars, or like star, like constellations.
Okay.
And then they announced Project Hadar, a third entirely distinct IP created from scratch. And according to my coworker's write-up, this project is in the earliest stages of the creative process, according to the studio, which means it is not actually developing any of the game just yet. For now, CD Projekt Red is working exclusively on the foundation for the new setting.
What the hell?
So we got 3 new Witcher games, a new Cyberpunk game, and an all-new IP from CD Projekt Red. So they're busy, but at the same time, it's going to be a while until we see anything.
All they're telling you is they're busy, though. They're not saying they have anything. It's like, oh, I got a bunch of stuff going on. It's going to be great. You're going to see. But we don't know anything about it.
Yeah, so The Witcher, it says that it's being developed under the codename Polaris. The studio says it is the beginning of a new saga and that it aims to release 2 more Witcher games after Polaris, creating a new AAA RPG Witcher trilogy.
I wonder if they're going to split off something with Ciri, and you would
play smart, right?
Ciri, that would be smart.
Though even if it's just like, all right, you can swap between Ciri and Geralt. I don't know.
I mean,
Geralt's still very beloved.
You had times where you played as Ciri in Wild Hunt, but yeah, I think a whole game dedicated to her would be actually pretty interesting.
It would be.
She's got more personality than Geralt has. You know, look, people love Geralt, right? But he's meant to not have much personality. She has more to her.
Yes. But I think that's all the gaming we need to talk about.
Yeah, we covered a lot. We don't have as much on the fighting side, but you know, we might as well at least start with what's coming up this week. We're obviously coming off of a weekend without fights, not without fights entirely, but I would say the most high-profile thing, combat sports-wise, that happened was Alistair Overeem coming back to kickboxing and beating Badr Hari in their trilogy fight, which apparently was a good fight. I didn't get to watch it, but I would like to probably at some point.
I like some stills from it, but that's
I like some kick. I like high-level kickboxing, especially when it's the heavyweights. The heavyweights can be fun. So like watching the old K1 Grand Prix was a lot of good time. But yeah, it's something that it may not necessarily be for everybody, but this sounds like it was a fun one to watch. But I didn't watch. I can't engage with it much. We're moving forward instead of looking back. And this weekend they're at the UFC Apex again. And the headliners for this week's fight night are Alexa Grasso and Viviane Araujo, flyweights. And there's some stakes here, at least. They're fighting for something. It's not just like, there's a fight at the top here. I think whoever wins this one, I don't know necessarily that they are the next in line for the title, but they're like right there. They might even get the next shot. Depends on how impressive they win, right?
Oh, of course, yeah.
But Grasso in particular, the UFC has wanted to kind of get to that point. I think they really love finding fighters that can help them break through in Mexico. The way, especially they now seen how Brandon Moreno has done, how he's really turned into a big star. I'm sure they would like to replicate that if they can with someone like Alexa Grasso.
I mean, I literally was on Instagram Live last night, or I was not on, but I was watching Brandon Moreno on Instagram Live last night with his kids opening up soccer cards, and he had 2,000 people watching him, just opening up like packs of cards. And I was like, all right, this guy's he's definitely made an audience for himself.
He has. He's carved it out in a way that, and it always disappoints me because this isn't a reflection of him in particular, but I'm like, man, this could have happened with Mighty Mouse Johnson. He does this. He does not the same stuff, but he appeals to in a lot of ways very similar types. Kind of geeks and stuff. Like right, like
yeah,
people like us.
I want Mighty Mouse and Brandon Moreno to have a podcast together.
I wonder if they've had any conversation before. They must have. They must have crossed paths.
They're in the same division, or I mean, I guess were in the same division, but they're both at the top of the division. They both like similar things. I think that this fight at the top here, we got very derailed there with the Mighty Mouse and Brandon Moreno discussion, but Alexa Grasso and Araujo, I think is a pretty compelling matchup in that division. And you're right. The UFC wants Grasso to break through here, have a big performance. I think she looks great at 125. I think that she could, because she started at 115 in the UFC, right?
It's the right home for her, though. Yeah, I mean, she got way too big for that pretty quickly, and there's way too much forcing yourselves to get down to the lowest possible weight class. It doesn't need to be that way. We see success left and right when fighters move up, and really it comes down to just talent at the end of the day. At heavyweight, I mean, some of these guys are 30 pounds apart, and the smaller guy will still win. It's not like you need to be bigger.
I'm just looking at the women's flyweight rankings here. So everybody in front of Grasso has been defeated by Shevchenko.
Right. Another reason why she could get in there, but there are probably fighters that are still more accomplished in that time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I mean, Grasso, there's a lot on the line for her, especially, but Araujo as well. If Araujo has a big performance, what's to say that she's not going to be, if she gets a big finish in a headlining spot, even if it's not the biggest card with the most eyes on it, that could propel her upwards to a title shot against Valentina, because they're always looking for challenges against Valentina.
The reason I would say she's not necessarily going to be there is a fight next weekend, which we'll talk more about then. Between Caitlin Chukagian and Manon Fiorot, the French prospect, I guess you could call her. I don't know if she's really a prospect anymore, but she's really up and coming, and I think the winner of that one has a really good claim to it, especially if it is Fiorot. There's another market they would like to break into. And they have not really broken in the same way yet. So the fact that they could get into France more, I think that would be very helpful for them. So I hate that I have to think of it through the UFC's lens, but that's what it is. It's the reality. So yeah, I don't know. We'll see what comes out of these two fights, but these are easily the two biggest flyweight fights of the year that don't have a title up for grabs.
That's fair. What else on this card are you looking forward to? Because there's a couple at the top of the card that I am excited for. And then I see one a little bit further down, but there's not a whole lot of meat on these bones.
No. There's a lot of prospects here. I am very, very much all about the last three fights on the card. So it's this one. The co-main is Jonathan Martinez against Cub Swanson. Cub making his debut at bantamweight, first time in his career.
Oh wow,
that'll be interesting to see. Yes, indeed. So that'll be interesting to see. Martinez has been pretty hot lately. I think he's a really good up and comer as well. So I'm curious what comes of that. And then the one even before that is actually my favorite fight on this card.
Same.
Askar Askarov and Brandon Royval. Brandon Royval couldn't be in a boring fight if he tried. I mean, that's not even entirely true.
You just doomed that fight.
He's one of those guys who's more or less appointment viewing because he always comes to bang and he's looking to finish it very quickly. Most of the time, there's some fun finishes in there. Askarov does not typically go inside the distance. Those typically go 3 rounds with him, and I wouldn't be surprised if that happened here. But I could see it being a kinetic fight throughout anyway. I'm interested in that one, and this is another fight with title implications too, because whoever wins this one, they're probably the most deserving after we get past not just the Moreno, Figueiredo, whatever number series that it'll end up being, but also Alexandre Pantoja has to get his shot first. After that, the winner of this makes a lot of sense. They may still have to fight again, though. But either way, it's a high-level fight. This is an elite fight. I love it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, that's really, both of these guys are knocking on the door of a title shot, and they're both pretty fun fighters. So I am with you 100% there.
Now, I want to know, because I'll give my reaction after, but I want to know which of the other fights down the card are you also very interested in?
I think Serkinov-Menefield could be fun.
Okay, that was not what I was expecting you to say, to be honest.
It could have been Nick Maximov versus Jacob Malkoun.
Nope, not that one. That was not what I was thinking either. I'm not saying you're wrong. I'm saying this is not what I was thinking.
Were you thinking Dusko Todorovic versus Jordan Wright?
No, you're not going to get it, apparently.
All right.
I thought you were going to say Rafael Assunção and Victor Henry.
I like Rafael Assunção.
It's a higher level bantamweight fight. Like, these guys are, somewhere in the neighborhood of like the top 25 in the world, which is to say they're much higher in the UFC, because there are a lot of bantamweight talent throughout the world. It's not just in the UFC, right? So yeah, I like this fight too. It's Rafael Assunção. They've never had a good job of trying to market him. He's not, I don't know, for whatever reason, they just don't see him as very marketable, despite the fact that he's been an elite talent for well over a decade.
Yeah.
But he's on the back nine now, like he's kind of near the end of the road. I don't think that's, disrespectful to say. He is, as I pull up his age now, he's 40. Okay. So he's already crossed over the big 4-0. There's not a whole lot of time left, realistically. He's also lost his last 4 in a row. So he's sliding, but I still view him as a high-level guy. I mean, his losses are Marlon Moraes, Corey Sandhagen, Cody Garbrandt, and Ricky Simone. These are all elite guys, too. So, and his last win, which, again, we're talking about now 4 years ago. It's been a while since he won a fight, but his last win is over Rob Font, another very good talent. So,
yeah.
This is his first distinct step down, I think, in competition, and it's not even that big because Victor Henry's really good.
I think that's why I didn't pick it. Like, I know Rafael Assunção is great, but I don't know a ton about Victor Henry. He's had one fight in the UFC, and it was a good win. But like, I just I don't know a ton about him.
What would you rate the main event here?
I've been thinking about this because I really like Alexa Grasso. She's a fighter I always try to catch her fights. I think that she is a very solid boxer. She can be scrappy when she needs to be, but she can be technical as hell. But still, I don't know how much I like this as a main event.
What your interest is?
My interest as
really
a fight,
what it comes down to is just your interest.
As a fight, I'd say
judging it as a main event. I mean, are you interested in this one fight?
I'll say 2.5.
2.5? I think that's probably fair. I think I could go with the 2.5 too. And unfortunately, there's just not a whole lot of sizzle. I think there's probably more steak. You know what I mean? I think the fight actually could be pretty good, but it's just not that interesting.
Sure.
So I'm very prepared to actually sit down and watch this fight and be like, hey, that was pretty good. But I don't know. It's just neither one of them, I guess, makes you say, man, I really want to watch. Like, there's some people who really like Alexa Grasso, and you do too. But yeah. I haven't heard a whole lot of Viviane Araújo's fan base. I don't know who it is, and that's unfortunate because she's very talented. Maybe she'll break through and we'll get to see a little bit more of her. But it's just, yeah, if you're talking about, hey, this is the fight that's getting you to watch the UFC this weekend, I don't know.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna say 2.5.
Okay, now I guess I'll go with like what my overall ranking of the card itself is.
Well, the undercard, everything under the main event. Yeah,
I'm gonna give it a 2.
I'm gonna actually put it at a 2.5. I'll go a little higher than you just because I really do love the Royval Askarov fight a lot. And I am curious about Cub Swanson. After that, yeah, it gets a lot more murky for me.
Assunção Henry, Serkinov, Menefield. I have interest in Nick Maximov. But like, yeah, Dusko Todorovic versus Jordan Wright could be fun, I guess.
There's probably going to be a bunch of finishes on this one. That's my prediction. There's going to be a bunch of finishes, but also I don't know. it feels like that just some fights that CMB says, right?
Yeah, I don't know. Like, it's one of those weird fight night cards where it's just, hey, let's just throw a bunch of random fights on here. Stakes be damned.
Yeah, pretty much. That is unfortunate, but it is what it is. We're also, of course, a week out from, well, we will be a week out from UFC 280, and there is a lot going on there, so that'll be a lot more fun.
Unfortunately, we're not going to be able to preview that, though, because...
No, we won't be, because you are traveling, as you mentioned.
Yeah.
But we'll have something fun planned. We're figuring out what we're going to do to give you guys a show in the interim.
Yeah, I wish that we could... well, I guess we could preview it, technically. It just might... a fight or two might fall out by then.
Oh, I mean, no, I don't mean previewing the card. I just mean as far as the show that we're going to give you.
Yeah.
I see what you're saying.
But yeah, we could technically. I mean, we know what the card is.
I would say, we'll skip it. We'll be all right. We'll stay. They know what's happening. They'll figure it out. Look, UFC 280. Google it. You got Google.
All right. Well,
but yeah, I mean, there's just a little bit going on in the fight world in the last week. Nothing major, but I'll just update you with a few things that I saw and kind of want some reactions to. Frankie Edgar's final career opponent. He'll be fighting at UFC 281 in my neck of the woods in New York, Madison Square Garden. He will be fighting Chris Gutierrez, it was announced. And although he does concede that he could fight someone in the summer if someone gets lippy at Seaside. And mark my words, someone's going to get lippy at Seaside. That's just the way it goes.
Famously lippy.
Yeah. Oh, I mean, if you watch Jersey Shore, then you would know. And if you're from New Jersey, then yeah, you really know. But... yeah, that was. How do you feel about Gutierrez as his final opponent? What's your reaction?
I would rather it be, again, same thing with Jose Aldo. I would rather it be a peer, somebody like a Dominic Cruz, somebody like a Jose Aldo. I would want that to be the send off. But at the same time, I could not be happier for him that it's going to be at MSG. I think that's an amazing send off for a pretty local guy. Guy who's
he's big in this market for sure.
He's been in New York and New Jersey his entire life. So like, yeah, I think that's a great send off for him.
It is. I don't love the choice of opponent, and I like Chris Gutierrez. Don't get me wrong. This is because I like and respect Chris Gutierrez. I'm not saying I want Frankie Edgar to be fed somebody. I don't want someone to just be like, you know, kind of the can that's put there so he can kick it at the end. Mm-hmm. And he wouldn't want that either. But man, he's been getting knocked out a lot. And Chris Gutierrez is much more well known for his kicking game, especially his low kicks. But the guy hits hard. I just don't love it. I just don't. But look, it's a big opportunity for Gutierrez. It's definitely a chance. We'll talk more about this in about a month when the fight's coming up. But it's a big opportunity for him, and I'm happy for him in that respect. And it's nice that Frankie gets his send off in the right place with his family there. And I would have loved if they could have found a way to get Dominic Cruz in there with him at some point. Yeah, in the last few years. I mean, it should have happened. And the fact that it didn't, I feel like balls were dropped on the UFC's part. Maybe the two didn't want to fight each other. I don't know. I doubt it. I really doubt it.
So much. So we finally got these three legends in the same division, and Dominic Cruz, Jose Aldo, Frankie Edgar. These three legends
Aldo
are finally
fought Jose, but
it's just like, man, they're finally all in the division, and they just circled each other for a long time.
The fact that Cruz fought neither of them bothers me.
Right,
that's what bothers me. It should have happened, and it just didn't. So I'm disappointed. It's what it is. We'll soldier on, right?
It doesn't seem like it was even like an injury related, because like for so long Dominic Cruz has been out with injuries. He's finally seemingly back. I mean, he had a pretty rough knockout his last time out, but still, it doesn't seem like it was like, all right, his feet are bothering him like they have, or his knee or anything like that. It just
that we're hearing. I mean,
again, that doesn't could be whatever.
It's not
but
there, I don't think when he's talking about his injuries that he's had in the past, like, it's not like, oh yeah, I got nicked up here, and like he's had major injuries, right? So like that's the ones he's telling you about. What are the ones he's not telling you about?
I would just have loved to have seen it happen, man. Like
I know. No,
we talked about it last time when Jose retired. It was like, all right, well, what would have been the best retirement fighter? Or he has one more fight in his contract. Who would it have been? it absolutely should have been Dominic Cruz. And that's how I feel about Frankie Edgar. Frankie Edgar, it should be Dominic Cruz. I really wish that there was a way. But again, maybe Cruz isn't ready to go at MSG. And I think MSG is more important than the opponent, to be honest.
Let me tell you what would have been much more interesting for me is that they found a way to do it last year, because I look at, and I don't want to spend too much more time on this, but Dominic Cruz, his last two fights, his two fights, I should say, in 2021 were against Casey Kenny and Pedro Munoz. I mean, there's not really a whole lot of sizzle on either of those fights. I don't see why those had to be the opponents that he was getting. Now, look, at the time, it probably made more sense. I'm looking back at it now because I'm just mad that we're not getting the other thing, right? It's reality. So I was would have been nice if who cares about him fighting Casey Kenny? My God.
Yeah.
And Frankie didn't fight that much earlier than that. Like Frankie fought in February. Dominic fought in March. They could have found a way to make that fight together, because that would have been much more. Do Casey Kenny against Corey Sandhagen, and then do Frankie Edgar against Dominic Cruz. We get a fight that I think is much more interesting there.
Yeah,
but obviously it led to an amazing moment for Corey Sandhagen, so good for him.
Mm-hmm.
At any rate, that's probably all we need to really have said. I think we're moving away a little too far from the idea there. But two more things before we leave. Number one, Juliana Pena calling for the trilogy fight with Amanda Nunes. Is it too soon for your taste? For your interest as a fan? I forget about that kind of thing, but
I don't think it is, because unless, who else really is there? Ketlin Vieira? Unless we want to do Valentina moving up to take on Amanda, it's like, what else do we want to do in that division? Like, nobody's really set themselves apart from the crowd. It's like, we have this trilogy where it's 1-1. Why not?
I know, but also it's 1-1. Those were the last two fights, right? And for the vast majority of those two fights, Amanda Nunes was the distinctly better fighter. She was the better fighter in the first round of the fight she lost. She was the better fighter in every round of the fight she won. It's just, I don't know. I think we know who's better here. I don't know. And the other thing too is Juliana Pena going to be distinctly better now to get that victory? I don't know that she would. I think it would make much more sense for, let's say, just get another opponent in there like Ketlin Vieira, and see how that one goes, or preferably Valentina Shevchenko, like you said.
Mm-hmm.
That's the trilogy I want to see. If you're going to do an Amanda Nunes trilogy, please do a Valentina Shevchenko.
But does Valentina need more time to get up to that size? Because Amanda is a huge bantamweight at this point.
Doesn't. I don't believe the size is the big difference here. I think they're equal in skill.
I think
the last fight that they had, now granted, the last fight they had actually was not particularly interesting.
Not at all.
And it's entirely possible that the third one will also not be particularly interesting. But we now have two women whose profiles have grown considerably since then. Their cachet in the world has grown considerably. I think it could be a bigger fight. I think there's a lot of people who've come into the sport since then who don't know how that fight went, or at least they don't remember the nature of the fight as opposed to just knowing the result. So I think it'd be interesting to see. I think I'm way more engaged in that one than I am in a Juliana Pena fight. I just don't think it's the time.
Yeah.
Pena should fight. Why doesn't Pena fight, Ketlin Vieira? Sure.
Yeah, if they do the champ versus champ, I think that Pena Vieira is the fight to make. But there's also, we're waiting for other fighters to emerge out of this division. Like Holly Holm has been holding on to that top 4 spot, or like the top 4 of the division for ever since she knocked out Ronda Rousey, right?
Yeah, well, it's not much of a division, to be honest. I would rather, if you were to ask me, and I don't want to scrap the bantamweight division, but if you were to ask me what my 3 favorite divisions are on the women's side, I'm going to say it's 105, 115, and 125. Not in that order necessarily, but those 3 divisions, those are the ones that I think we want. I want to bring over 105. Get rid of featherweight in the UFC. There's a better featherweight division in Bellator. There are some better, on the whole, women fighting at 155 pounds or 45. Now we have Aspen Ladd over in PFL. You have better talent elsewhere than the UFC on the whole, other than Amanda Nunes. It's just they don't even have rankings. It's a joke. They have when you go to the rankings page, it has Amanda Nunes' picture, and then under rankings, there's nobody. They don't list anyone. It's been like this for the duration. It's so stupid. You can get 15 contenders at 105 pounds in the UFC. It's doable. I want to see that.
Yeah, I mean, I wish there was a 105 division. It would be really great to see what talent the UFC can cultivate there, because I feel like there's a much deeper pool there than there is 145.
They could do the same thing they did when they brought over when they finally instituted the men's flyweight division. Do like a little 4-woman tournament. You bring in, if you can, Invicta's champion Jillian DeCourcy. You bring in, I would say it would probably be the Ryzen champion, which I'm gonna have to look up her name again just so I don't mispronounce it. But then you bring in, let's say the top 2 women in the UFC roster who could get down to 105 and say, hey, let's just put a pool of a 4-woman tournament there. Figure it out. Seiki Izawa, that's the name I was looking for. She is like basically new to the scene, but she very quickly rose to the top. I think that would be really cool.
It would be great. I mean, I've wanted them to do an atomweight division for a while now, and it just doesn't seem like they want to. I mean, but also, to be fair, the UFC loves the heavier divisions. Like, despite
I know.
evidence to the contrary that like 125, 135, 145, and 155 just kick total ass, they love putting heavyweight main events, 5-round heavyweight main events of like completely inconsequential nature at the top of these fight night cards.
But here's what they don't love: women's flyweight fights.
That's true.
So it's easy to get rid of that. The only reason it really exists is the only reason it exists is 1, they had Cyborg, and then 2, Cyborg lost the belt to Amanda Nunes, who has still retained the belt and is still another champion. So there's no reason to get rid of it if she's already got a say. Like I'm not saying you get rid of it while Amanda Nunes is still fighting, but when she's retired, move away from it. And I hope they add 105 at that point.
They had their one chance to inject some life into it when Kayla Harrison was kind of talking to some other promotions, and they didn't take the chance. So that's pretty much, I think that was the nail in the coffin. Like once Amanda vacates the belt and like retires, or decides she just wants to focus on 135, or just decides she doesn't want to deal with going up and down in weight, that's when that belt is going to just be like, all right, we're retiring that belt as well.
And it doesn't sound like the UFC is going to open up its coffers enough for Kayla Harrison's liking anyway. So, like, there's not really a reason to wait around for her. She can get more money elsewhere. So,
yeah, I mean, she's got to be. I mean, PFL's been making some moves lately. So this is not me disrespecting her, but I feel like the fight to make for them, it has to be Cyborg.
Yeah,
like that's
absolutely. That's and again, like I said, that's where the featherweight division actually is in MMA. It's at Bellator. They have the best flyweight division.
Featherweight.
Overall. Last thing before we kick it here. This is only a UFC adjacent thing here, but I wanted to get your thoughts on it too. Uriah Hall, UFC middleweight veteran, recently retired from mixed martial arts. He is now going to take a boxing match against one of the top NFL running backs of the last 10 years, Le'Veon Bell.
Yeah.
What the heck is going on here, dude? How is this okay?
I mean, it makes more sense than Conor versus Floyd.
No, it doesn't.
Yes, it does. Because
no, it makes way less sense.
Conor, with barely any boxing experience whatsoever, going on to take on one of the greatest boxers of all time in his sport. It wasn't like it was a mixed rules match. Now we have Uriah Hall I'm assuming this is his professional boxing debut. Right?
I am almost positive it is.
Taking on a guy
99%.
Who is not a seasoned boxer. Like, it makes more sense to me from a competitive standpoint. And yes, Uriah Hall, a very good fighter, but a lot of his attacks, a lot of his biggest moments came from kicks. There's not going to be any kicks in this one.
Uriah Hall is going to just crush Le'Veon Bell.
I imagine he will.
Crush him.
But I think
I can't believe this is approved. I really can't.
It's got to be more competitive than Floyd Conor. Like, in terms of...
I'm not saying... No, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that fight was competitive, Floyd Conor. But that made a lot more sense because it made a whole lot of dollars. This one, it's just another part of the card on the undercard of Jake Paul and Anderson Silva.
Yeah, I'm talking purely as like a sanctioning decision, right? I think it made more sense than Conor McGregor coming over to box Floyd Mayweather, one of the greatest boxers in the history of the sport.
Did you see Le'Veon Bell when he fought Adrian Peterson recently?
Yeah, he just knocked his block off.
But what the punch was like from a mile away. Yeah. Like,
I'm not saying he's a good boxer.
If he even tries that again, it's already over. Like, I legitimately do worry about Le'Veon Bell's safety against Uriah Hall. I actually do. I wouldn't have worried about that with Conor McGregor because Floyd's a very different fighter too.
Yeah.
And Conor has fought for a very long time. Le'Veon Bell has not. There's at least that.
That's fair.
You have the discrepancy in combat sports experience is so vast here that I really do worry about Le'Veon Bell to a certain point. I just hope it's officiated well in a way that protects him and doesn't allow this to go quickly or go too long.
Who is hosting this or promoting this card?
It's a Showtime aired fight. I guess in theory,
so we'll have legitimate officials and everything.
It's in Arizona. So it'll be staffed by the Arizona Commission.
Okay. So I mean, I was worried. Like, all right,
I'm very disappointed in Arizona's commission for allowing this, though. I really am. And I met a bunch of people from there when I was at the ABC conference earlier this year. They all seemed like good folks, but this is disappointing.
What was the commission that just disallowed Melvin Gilliard from fighting?
Melvin Gillard?
Yeah, Colorado.
It was Colorado.
Okay.
Colorado's commissioner, Tony Cummings, fantastic, really progressive. He is a terrific addition to the regulatory side of combat sports. He is fantastic.
So Melvin Gillard decided that he was going to try to do some BKFC action, and Colorado said, no.
No, I applaud them heavily. I've known Tony now for a year or two, and he seems like he's got his head screwed on in a way. He comes from the MMA background, by the way, and he's worked in like the same gym as like TJ Dillashaw and Corey Sandhagen out in Colorado. So this is somebody who really understands fighters and that kind of thing. So it's nice to see. This is not a politician or someone like that. This is someone who is like one of our people, in the sense of loving fights. So and it was nice to see that. But yeah, I'm again very disappointed in the Arizona Commission here for letting this fight go on. I am worried about Le'Veon Bell here because I think Uriah Hall is just going to destroy him. Maybe I'm wrong. I hope I'm wrong because I hope he's safe, but that's where we're at.
And make no mistake, I'm not saying like this is a very good fight. Like, oh wow, what great matchmaking this is.
No, I get it.
But I also am like, all right, we can't be like, this is not okay. And then on the other hand, be like, well, we've had other MMA fighters coming over to boxers, and it's like...
But the combat sports experience is there, and that's where I think I'm at. And it sounds like the Lego movie is done upstairs based on the noises coming from there. But that means it's the end of our show. If you like what you heard, subscribe, Apple, Spotify, YouTube. You know where to find us. And while you're at it, would you kindly follow our social handles at Brian Boucher and at Scott_Fontana on Twitter and Instagram.
And as a reminder, next week I will be away. So we're going to do a pre-recorded episode. So unfortunately, not a whole lot of timely stuff. Maybe we'll preview a little bit of 280. Maybe we will talk to our more evergreen topics here. But we're going to do something fun next episode. If you want to reach us with any questions, feedback, topics you'd like to hear about, or just letting us know what you're hyped about, hit us up at groundandpwnedpod@gmail.com or at groundandpwned on Twitter. Until next time, enjoy the fights, enjoy the games. We will talk to you next week.